in our astrology, we're so much more than just our sun signs. We have our moon, we have our Mercury, we have all of these different placements that make us
Mhm.
uniquely us. And so it was just like magic. All of a sudden, all the dots connected, and I was able to connect the dots between what I knew from brand and business and everything I knew about astrology. It was like boom.
In our fast-paced world, many of us struggle with overthinking and worry that leaves us feeling overwhelmed or stuck. In this podcast, we will hear stories of successful individuals and have conversations and ways to reach our true potential by embracing every micro detail of our identity, especially the flaws that make us unique. This is your host, Maria Grace Woke. I'm a Filipino-American entrepreneur, psychotherapist, and mom of 2 boys. And my mission is to amplify diverse perspectives and experiences and inspire your journey to wellness and fulfillment. Hi, everyone. Today, we have a special guest who will take us on a fascinating journey into the realm of astrology. As someone who grew up as an avid reader of daily horoscopes from the newspaper, yes, remember them, when your morning routine involved unraveling this handcrafted artifact, folded and wrapped up, sealed with a rubber band, and delivered, thrown to our driveway by the paper fairies. Yes, actual newspapers, the ones that turn your fingers black. I would skip through events to go into the comic section and read my daily horoscope. I've always been intrigued by the cosmic forces, and funny that most of the days my day would be based on that horoscope. Astrology holds a significant place in the beliefs and practices of many cultures, including our Filipino cultures, stemming from pre-colonial indigenous beliefs and practices. Astrology provides cultures with a sense of identity and connection to something greater than themselves, offering a sense of reassurance, guidance, and a way to make sense of the world. I want you guys to get ready to dive into the mysteries of the stars and uncover how they can guide and inspire us on our journey. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our esteemed astrologer, Leslie Tagorda. Hi, Leslie. Please do us the honor and introduce yourself.
Yes. Oh, hi, Grace. I've been looking forward to our conversation for so long. It's just been such a joy to get to know you over the years from afar. And I just admire your hula and your dedication to your health and just like the transformation you do for your clients. I just appreciate all of your hard work. I'm Leslie Tagorda, and I also live in the Bay Area, like Grace, but I'm originally from Hawaii. I'm a Hawaii born, but I'm half Filipino and half Jewish. And just growing up Filipino Jewish and having a mixed identity and both identities based in either genocide or colonialism, I grew up with a lot of messed up mindsets about who I was supposed to be. And growing up, I went to music school and I became a classical musician. And I always had this love for astrology.
I was actually thinking about you last night because last night, my son Gavin, he's in 7th grade, but he had the opportunity to play viola because he's in orchestra. And they played with the high schoolers and the other middle school, and they just sounded so amazing. And I thought about you and how because I was meeting with you today, and how you're a classical musician and you're amazing. That's also a pretty amazing part of you.
It's so funny. I play the clarinet and I still play the clarinet professionally. And I started also in middle school because my mom played the clarinet. My mom is Jewish. And my grandmother wanted me to learn how to play sunrise, sunset. And so there's this little Hawaii girl learning how to play the clarinet. And being a musician really opened up a lot of doors for me. And it was easy and just like the right amount of challenging. So I needed to, by the time I was 18, I was just ready to leave Hawaii. Hawaii just felt like this really small place and I wanted to explore. So I got into a really good music conservatory on the East Coast. And so I went on my music degree and I still play classical music. And it was interesting as I was on this track to become an orchestral player. And when I was in orchestras and auditioning for orchestras, I didn't know why. I just felt so disembodied and so disempowered. it's just like the whole orchestral system in America is very classist and it's
Oh,
very oppressive. And my young mind, I wasn't smart enough yet to understand what was going on. And I just knew that I couldn't be in orchestras anymore. And so I did that for a good 15 years until I was like,
wow.
I can't do that anymore. And so now I play in a chamber ensemble, which is like a group, a small ensemble. There's 5 musicians. We're advocates. It's so interesting. I play in a group that we specialize in Latina
Okay.
composers, Latinx composers. So we only play classical music written by Latinx composers, and we tour around the country doing master classes and talking about advocacy for BIPOC musicians.
I love it because I do believe that when you're musical, if you love to sing, if you play an instrument, I think it's a very spiritual thing. I think there's something about the vibration and the music that kind of really helps us tune into our body. I think that helps us be more in tune with our inner self. And I'm feeling a little goosebumps right now because I do feel like somehow that was in line with your path, right? Just
Yeah.
being a musician first and then doing this and then helping others with their businesses.
When you say like that kind of the tuning, right, of that music. And I love that I was a musician first before I became a professional astrologer, because I do believe in that attunement where you're like, if we think about listening to your son practice on the viola, like he'll tune one of the strings first, and then he'll tune the other 3 strings, and then he'll tune the strings together. And when we're working with our astrology, we're tuning each of our highest energies just like that. We're getting them so
Oh,
that they're more in tune, that they're more in vibration, that we're operating from like the highest point of that. And whether you're a musician or a singer or a dancer like you, there's the tuning, and then there's that rhythm, that pulse that drives us forward, those like cycles and those seasons that we also attune to. So not just the frequency, but that rhythm. And I don't know if you know this. When I started playing the clarinet, before I played the clarinet, I was also a serious hula dancer in Hawaii.
oh,
And
love.
the Merry Monarchs just finished, right? Have you been watching the Merry Monarchs?
Yes, yes. Oh my God. It brings tears to my eyes. Yes, like last night, watching my son play with the orchestra brought tears to my eyes. Anything that has to do with dancing and singing and being able to just witness that live
Mhm.
is I don't know. I just feel it so deeply.
And I can see how that's like for you, it's so like devotional, just like the singing as you move your body, as you think about music, how it's really like an offering to spirit or to your highest self.
I love
I
that.
really see that in your chart. I was very dedicated to my hula practice when I was in middle school, but when I started playing the clarinet and got much more involved in music and band and orchestra, I had to make a decision. And I was on track to be a Merry Monarch because I was in the Merry Monarch class in my halau. And then sadly, that was the one that I gave up. But hula is just such a, it's deep, buried deep in my heart, just such a part of me
Yeah, and you can always reignite it anytime, right? That's the good, wonderful thing about hula is like you can dance it at
forever,
any
any
age.
age.
Yeah. So that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So, okay, so you went from a musician and you're actually traveling the world too, playing,
Still
and
traveling.
then still traveling right now. But then at the same time,
Had my business. Yeah, I had my web and brand business.
but then at the same time,
Had my business. Yeah, I had my web and brand business. And so when I was a musician, I picked up web and branding because I needed to pay the bills. And little did I know that on the subconscious level, I was actually going into web design and branding to figure out how I needed to express who I was. And so with my web design and branding business, where we're always like figuring out the identity of a person, the identity of a business, I had this like total breakdown about 2018 where I was like, I can't do this design work anymore. Like I felt like I wasn't making any real change for my clients, because when we were branding and choosing these archetypes for our identities of our businesses, we were just guessing from like your 12 archetypes that Carl Jung put out. What are we guessing? You know, like,
Mhm.
are we going to be the ruler? Are we going to be the caretaker? And I was like, there has to be a different way. And then all of a sudden, I totally it just came forward to me like in this flash of inspiration where I was like, oh, my astrology. I know that in our astrology, we're so much more than just our sun signs. We have our moon, we have our Mercury, we have all of these different placements that make us uniquely us. And so it was just like magic. All of a sudden, all the dots connected, and I was able to connect the dots between what I knew from brand and business, like branding and all of the requirements and logistics about branding a business, and everything I knew about astrology. It was like, boom. It's like, what is this? And I realized that there was a whole method of branding oneself and our business in total alignment to our astrology. And so that was pretty much a long story bio of how I became what I call now a brand and leadership astrologer for change makers. Yeah. So it's really interesting. People, as we get older, we're like, we so dread approaching like middle age, so to say. I'm now 49 years old, which sounds really insane. But at middle age, we have this thing called the Uranus opposite Uranus. So I'm just jumping everybody into the deep end. I'm throwing everybody into the deep end of astrology. You might have heard about the Saturn return that happens like right around 30 when everybody's Saturns return to the place when they were born. So that's where these like cosmic cycles work out, these celestial cycles that have the rhythms already built in. So Saturn takes 30 years to go around the sun. Uranus takes 84 years to go around the sun. So right between 38 and 44, all of us, if we get to that age, we will experience sometime in there our Uranus opposite Uranus. And in media, we call this a midlife crisis. But in astrology, I call this a midlife awakening because everything that you learned up to then starts to gel and come together, and it wants to break free. It wants to refuel your body, and all the dots start to connect in terms of like what you are truly here to do. And at least for women, we find our voice and our inherent power just sits right below the surface. We don't have to dig deep and try hard anymore. It's just there. And so when I look at your chart, I know that you've already passed your Uranus opposite Uranus. And this was probably happened to you maybe 2-3 years ago, where you're just feeling super restless. Like you didn't know what to do with your health, with your wellness, with your daily routine. You're like, I have to change something. And you changed it, not necessarily knowing why. And then now that you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh, I feel so much more stable and centered in what I'm here to do, what I'm here to create, my daily routines and practices. Would you say that's true for you?
And for those of you listening, she just asked me for my birth date, and she asked me if, can I just read you your birth chart? And I said, okay. And this is, she's got my birth chart right now. I would say like around 2 to 3 years ago, that was around the pandemic. And yes, I was restless. And yes, I was like, what should I do next? I was feeling I got a surge of clients because everyone was anxious and struggling to survive. Everyone was in need. And I was trying to help as many as I could. That was not necessarily a good thing for me, though I did love all the clients that I was working with one-on-one. I didn't realize I was gonna burn out really quickly. And that happened. And I was taking care of myself. I was practicing really good boundaries, but you can only do so much if you are using up all your energy. And I am a very empathetic person. So I do absorb a lot of my clients' energy unknowingly. And so that's why I run it off. Like I would run after like heavy traumatic discussions. I would run it off so I could release it from my body. But I think not realizing that I was doing that, it was accumulating in my body. And so I was burnt out. And I decided, okay, I need to do something else right now to take care of myself, but to also still be able to help more people. And that is what brought me to exploring a little bit further to see what else I can do. And that's when I decided maybe I'll do a podcast. Maybe I can share more things with other people, information, and they don't have to have a session, right? if they can't afford therapy, they can at least listen, and just trying to just put myself out there more, even though I'm scared shitless all the time. And I hate public speaking, but now I know that it fills me somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Hope
mean,
that made sense.
that totally makes sense, Grace. You've done a TED Talk, you've created a podcast, and all about around you getting over your fear of public speaking and really being of service, because you're like, all these people need help. I'm not able to help them individually. Otherwise, I will be at capacity. I will burn out. So let me offer this. Let me inspire. Let me help relieve some of the pain and the trauma that other people might be going through if they can't access therapy themselves. That's so beautiful. And that really speaks to your sun in Scorpio, right? When we think about astrology, like you might have the CoStar app or you might have the Chani app and you're reading your horoscopes, right? And
I read my horoscope every day. That's like my ritual. Because I used to still get a newspaper, like my husband and I, people laugh at us because we still get the paper newspaper up until this year. We finally canceled it, which is so sad because now I don't have there is the online app, but it's not the same. I like the paper. I like reading my horoscope. And anyways.
No, I love it. So like people love their horoscopes because they want to know, oh, what's in the day for me. But the thing is that one of the things as a business owner, one of the things I love using astrology for instead of guessing all the time and struggling about like how we're supposed to be seen and how we're supposed to show up and who our ideal clients are and what is it that we're supposed to radiate as our superpowers, right? Because as business owners and especially as like women of color, right? We are fed all of these messages from society and from family and from culture that says, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And we start to believe it.
Yeah, it's ingrained in us.
It's ingrained in us. But, and we can look at our astrology, we can give ourselves so much permission and so much validation to attune to the energies that are inherently us, then really amplify those energies to be able to attract the right people and the right opportunities that are part of our highest.
That sounds amazing.
Doesn't it sound amazing? Because I feel like why I call the people that I work with change makers, whether they're entrepreneurs or maybe they're executives in their field, is that they will not or cannot work in conventional fields that other people are telling them what to do. And so they are change makers because there isn't a template, but there isn't a formula of how they're supposed to do something. The formula lives in the blueprint of their natal chart. And so just thinking about the sun sign, like everybody knows their sun sign, right? It's based on your birthday. Your sun sign is Scorpio, right? That's the sun. So when everybody, your sign, that if somebody says, hey, what's your sign? We're talking about your sun sign because your sun sign is based on your birthday. But you have your moon, you have your rising, you have Mercury, Venus, all of the other planetary placements that show us different parts of your being.
So I have a different moon sign. I have a Saturn sign like that.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
That make you specifically you. So I'm looking at your chart. I know that her sun is conjunct Uranus, the planet Uranus.
Okay.
And the planet Uranus is about change. It's about revolution. It's about being different and doing things differently. And your Scorpio sun, right? When we think about Scorpio, it's about transformation. Uranus breaks through like the glass ceiling and Scorpio breaks down. It distills, it goes deep, you're not afraid to talk about trauma. You're not afraid to hold space, to go deep about the emotional entanglements that people have stored in themselves, guilt, shame, taboo, all of those things. And you raise them up to disintegrate it so that people can really make lasting change in their lives.
Wow.
Would you say that?
Yes, I completely, you're reading me. Accurately. Sorry, go ahead.
One little thing.
Yeah, of course.
One big thing. So if you know your sign, your sun sign, and you know it, all of the parts of that sun sign, That is your superpowers, Grace. That is the energy that you're supposed to radiate and bring through in all of your work. So you've already found such a wonderful expression to be able to radiate your superpowers through your therapy practice, right? You're helping people break through and break down all of the guilt and the shames and the emotional blockages, right? And
Love
so
that.
it's so powerful just to simply know this energy that you're meant to radiate throughout you.
So I am meant to do what I'm doing. That's awesome. That's
Oh
so
my
great to
gosh.
hear.
Yes, 100%, Grace, 100%.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I just last Wednesday, I did a talk for a group of women, and I shared more of myself than usual on this talk, but I also taught them about fear and how to befriend fear. And I didn't know how this talk was going to go, but it's a whole hour long. And at the end, there were so many questions, which meant, okay, so they were listening, which is
Yeah.
good to know. And just to this morning, I get an email from the organizer, and she said that after my talk and everybody said goodbye, and at least 50 of them stayed in the room to discuss what I talked about, because she said that they got a whole lot out of it. And that just made me so emotional somehow, because it was like, because really I was thinking, I wonder how this talk is going to go. Because really I just shared a lot of my story and how and what I did to help myself. And so hopefully they are able to grasp that. And it sounds like they did, which made me feel so good. I really felt so emotional this morning before getting on with you.
Yeah. I want to reflect back on a couple of like really important things that you just said there. That was one of the reasons, like so many reasons why that talk was so successful, right? So you shared a very vulnerable part of yourself. You showed a very authentic part of yourself. And through that power that you found in yourself to share that scary piece, right? Those pieces that we normally want to hide, but you bravely shared that and people connected with that. In a way, your power empowered others to be able to
Mm,
talk and share their own fears. And the only way that fear, and I'm sure you've seen this, and this is, I'm not a therapist, but I know that my work is deeply therapeutic. I've seen
mhm,
it happen over and over again is that when we are vulnerable enough to share our fears and other people start to share, our fears don't have that kind of grasp and hold on us
mhm.
anymore because our fears are actually trying to teach us something. They're
Yeah.
trying to show us something and they want to be let free. You can't hide and bypass fear. You have to only walk through it. And to walk through it, you share it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what my topic was. Exactly. I said, every time I do something really scary, I have fear right next to me and I'm holding her hand,
Oh, I
because my
love that.
fear is a wounded part of me, which I shared and I've never shared before. And I think that was just something I wanted to try differently, and it was well received. So thank you for that. That
So powerful, Grace.
whatever
Love
you're
that.
doing and you're reading me is like dead on, so accurate, for us therapists, right? In order for us to be able to take other people to that level of healing, to that level of understanding, we have to have gotten there ourselves. So I'm wondering for you, how did you get here where you are right now?
Yeah, so much self-reflection,
Mm,
so much going deep. When I'm teaching astrology, of course, I'm teaching about the outward leadership and how we express ourselves with alignment in our brand and our marketing and our sales and all of those things. But on the other end of that is also the inner awakening. I call it inner awakening. I don't
mhm,
necessarily call it healing because I
mhm.
think that there's a mythology around healing that,
Okay.
oh, once you heal, you'll be like totally perfect and you'll just
Oh,
move forward. But
okay.
what healing to me is bringing awareness to those fears. And instead of trying to like make them go away, to accept them and love them, like how you did,
Mhm.
holding your fear's hand. That's loving and accepting the fear and not trying to push it away. It's like bringing it closer. And so that is that healing of connecting to all of those wounded parts. And so to me, astrology has really helped me because sometimes we get so clouded in all of the events that happen to us. Like we see them like just like on this 2D level. Oh, this person did this to me, or I did this to this person. But we don't take it next that down that level, like the why. Oh, why did that happen? Why do I have so much self-doubt? Like my fears, like my kryptonite, I call it, I have like comparison kryptonite. I have like self-doubt, just terrible self-doubt. I almost always will put somebody on a higher pedestal than I am, no matter what I've accomplished in my life. No matter how other people see me, self-doubt and comparisonitis are like my friends. What I was able to understand with my own astrology, and I used astrology. I've worked with therapists. I've done yoga. I've done like somatic therapy. I do regular self-care practices like acupuncture, going on retreats, massage, like all the things like how you do to move energy out of my body, working on just like posture and back and like how your body manifests. Done so much of that work. But what I've noticed is that I've always been able to guide my healer because I know the roots of my problems from looking at my astrology chart. I know where my pains come from. So, oh, why do I have that self doubt? Oh, I have that self doubt because Saturn is in my first house of self and identity. And I'm supposed to change and alchemize that self doubt into self mastery. Right? That's like my lifelong imprint. Oh, Chiron, the wounded healer, is another archetype in our astrology chart. And the myth of Chiron is that he became a gifted healer because he could never heal a wound in himself. But Chiron shows us that we are enough and that the scars that we have in our wounds, like all the things that we've learned to accommodate our wounds, like for you, your fear of speaking, enables you to become a gifted speaker. So all of the tools and strategies that you learn to overcome your fear and then excel at speaking, that's your contribution back to the world that Chiron teaches us. And so the reason why I opened up with identity, with my Filipino and Jewish background and just being persecuted intergenerationally, not just myself, but for generations and generations that are in my DNA, I'm here to unravel all the shame that I feel around being Filipino and being Jewish. And that's helped me learn and teach how people need to identify or truly authentically attune to their identity through their natal charts. So that's like a long way of talking about like my healing journey. But to me, the astrology shows the interconnectedness between the heroine's inner healing journey and the hero's outward leadership journey. Does that make sense? This is funny because I believe, and maybe other people have different beliefs, but I do believe that our souls come back as like reincarnations, right? And we spend our lives remembering our past lives and remembering our soul's purpose and things like that. And all I can remember was that when I was 6 years old, I knew I wanted to study the stars. That's all I
6 years old.
At 6 years old. My mom would buy me like NASA things. Like back at 6 years old, there was like the space shuttles were always going up at that time. And Ellison Onizuka was on the Challenger. And I remember that as it unfortunately crashed and all those. He was a Hawaiian astronaut. There was all of this stuff about science. So when I went to music school, I actually majored in astronomy for a little bit, like physics, the science of it all. But somewhere in between, like just elementary school, middle school, high school, I would always go to the occult sections of the bookstores because that's where the astrology books were. And like Filipinos, we love ghost stories and we love mythology and we love all
we're
things
very spiritual.
Yes.
Yes.
And so
Still do.
Totally. I was like drawn to all of that stuff. So I went straight to the occult section and I got all these astrology books. And so I was really self-taught on the astrology part until really recently. And once I started learning and studying astrology seriously as a profession, even though I had been studying it just on my own, it was like this floodgate opened of remembrance. And so every time I learn about some things in astrology, it wasn't like I had to like effort or really try hard and study. It was just like, oh yeah, I knew that. It was like just this book that got dusted off in like the deepest part of my soul.
Wow.
And so I went to a couple of Akashic Records readers, and Akashic Records people, they can look at like past lives and they can look at other things in your records, like your soul records.
For those of you who don't know what Akashic Records is, it's like a book. Like we all have this book that has records of our past lives and who we were and what we went through in our past lives.
I don't know how many past lives. I've had a couple of Akashic record readings from different people, and they've always confirmed that I've lived many lives as a star reader. So now, thinking about astrology and leadership, I have clients that are executives of like global conglomerates, I have thought leaders, I have entrepreneurs. I have people now that I'm training to read astrology in the way that I do for branding professionals and like marketing and sales professionals. I feel just that astrology can be so helpful in just pinpointing all of the energies again that we need to attune, and that when we are super in tune, we can resonate and attract what is ours, and that we know what we need to amplify just to live in ease and flow. And yet, ultimately, when we live in ease and flow, when we know our cycles, because like also like just thinking about like capitalism and colonialism in our lives and our works, we believe in this idea of hustle, that we have to be chasing and working hard. And that's where we go through these cycles of burnout. But if we follow the rhythm and the cycles of nature that we can see in our own astrology, we then can give ourselves permission to rest, permission to work, permission to retreat, permission to create. There's all of these different seasons that are already in our chart that we can start to live with more alignment, which is really that ease, impact, and flow.
Yeah. And I just totally agree with you. And it is healing to feel like you are a part of something bigger than yourself, right? It just takes away it just brings you to the present moment. And I think that is a powerful thing to be able to do when you're anxious or depressed or suffering, because it reduces the suffering. What I wanted to ask you was that you're doing something completely different, right? It's not like a regular life coaching. Not a lot of people do this. And I'm wondering if even just starting this business, this podcast, all of this, right? It's really being courageous to do something different, which is hard for a lot of people to do. So I'm wondering if you've had any stigma around it. Was there any like backlash or all that you had to go through?
Interesting that you bring up backlash, right? Because that's one of the fears that I've recently been exploring, because in my heart of hearts, and when I look at my natal chart, I know that I'm supposed to be serving millions, right? I know at my heart of hearts. And I'm like, but why am I not serving millions yet? I see this is the comparisonitis. So I can pinpoint, I can bring awareness, right? This is the comparisonitis going, well, there's other astrologers that have millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers, these like bigger and better and
But they're not you.
But they're not me. But still, that doesn't negate the comparisonitis, right? And then I was like, what is it energetically about me that I'm still keeping myself small? And the fear is still from like the persecution that comes from like my Jewish identity and my Filipino identity, right? My Filipino grandma I was like, Grandma, teach me how to speak Ilocano. And she's like, no. And I was like, why don't you want to teach me Ilocano? She's like, why do you need to know that? But ultimately, she didn't want me speaking Ilocano because she didn't want me to have an accent, right? So she was hiding part of herself. And then in my Jewish community, we would never tell people that we were Jewish because there is such anti-Semitism that still exists today. And so in my heart of heart, I know that I'm keeping small because I am afraid of persecution and backlash. And so even when I talk about astrology, you're like, oh, I didn't even know you had a podcast. I don't talk about it on my personal Facebook page. I have a private Facebook group that people that I talk all about my astrology. I have my email list. I have my communities where there are these like private places. They're these safe places that I have like my quote unquote believers, the people that won't give me backlash. But I know that down the pipeline, I'm going to be announcing something even much bigger than me. And I want to release an app. And one of my aims is to bring my astrology method. And I have an astrobrand method. I call it the astrobrand method. I'm going to bring it to the public because I want my astrobrand method to be mainstream. I want people to be like, I want to use astrology in my business. And what? Am I going to have backlash? You bet I'm going to have backlash.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. And so right now, I'm also working through my fears. I am getting used to this idea of maybe persecution, maybe witch hunt, maybe backlash, and trying to shore up my bravery and my courage so that I can serve millions. Yeah. That's my goal.
Yes. And hone into that fear, because that fear is there to protect you. It's trying to protect you from what your grandmother had feared, which is understandable based on what she had to go through. It's all the generational trauma that's ingrained, and it's also in our inherited, right?
Yeah, it's in our DNA.
Yeah, it's in our DNA. So you have to remind yourself that's part of my DNA, but it's not true anymore. And maybe you will get backlash, but if you believe in what you do, you have to know that you're safe, and you have to remind yourself that you're safe. And how can you make yourself safe right now?
And that's, I love that, Grace. Thank you for sharing that with me. Just like even that vision of me holding that scared hand of that scared part of me. It was just like, just even a couple of weeks ago and even just a month ago, I've been like grinding through that fear, right? Of that fear of persecution and that fear of backlash, because I am super conflict avoidant. Like I will run away from conflict. And I know that to take this next big step, I can't run away from conflict anymore.
Yeah. I mean, like discernment, right? What is the worst thing that can happen? Are you really not safe physically? Is your life going to be in danger? If not, are you going to be able to handle the stuff that comes up? And I can see it's yourself confidence that will be challenged. But again, it's like reminding yourself that this fear is just my protection. It's really trying to just make sure that I'm safe. And thank you for keeping me safe, but I need to get out and get bigger, because this fear, as much as I love you and have kept me safe for a long time, I need to grow. I need to grow bigger. And you can be with me. You can be next to me, but I am in control. I need to be in control. And you know what fear loves is the only thing, and I have a story for this, but maybe next time. But the two things that can weaken fear, not weaken, but just can overpower it, is love and gratitude. And if you love what you do, and if you love yourself, and you are grateful for the things that you put out there, the fear will really step aside and let you do your thing, because they trust you. Yeah. They know what you can do. They know your power. I'm excited to see you get bigger.
Thank you. I received that, Grace. And so, yeah, and just to show the example, right? Yes, just like Grace, I'm still scared and I'm still going to do it anyway.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay to be scared. We're human. Yeah. We're human. It's good that we're doing scary things. Yeah. Scary things are there to make our lives worth living.
Yeah. So much richer and deeper and meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this conversation. I don't want it to end, but I know I'm taking up so much of your time, and I would love to have you on again and talk more and know where you are in yet getting bigger and stepping further out of your comfort zone. I'm happy to, if you're willing to share with us your progress. I would love that. I would love to have you back. So anything else that you would like to share, your program?
Yeah, so for sure. So if you want to get in touch with me and learn more about my work, you can head over to starpowered.com. I have a free masterclass about how you can hone into your sun sign so that you can, or your sign, to radiate your superpowers. And that is at starpowered.com/radiate.
Love it.
I'll give you those links, Grace, so you can pop them in the notes for you. But it's a free masterclass and you'll get so much out of it, and how to use astrology in your life and your work.
Awesome. Awesome. And on her website, I believe you have your podcast.
Yes.
And she's on social
Instagram.
media,
Yeah, everything is
Instagram.
under Star Powered now. So you can find me on Star Powered Podcast. And on Instagram, my handle is Be Star Powered. BE Star Powered.
I love that. Star Powered. Awesome. Thank you again, Leslie, for having this conversation with me. I feel uplifted.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Grace, for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate your time.
We're gonna move mountains here.
Yay. I'm excited.
Bye, Grace. I'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you so much.
You're
You
welcome.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you resonate at all with the stories on this podcast and you're thinking about a change in your current situation, in your career, in your relationship, or maybe even in yourself, what's holding you back from taking the first step? Find out by taking the What's Your Biggest Self-Sabotage quiz that you can find on my website at mariagracewold.com. Until next time, stay kind and own your journey. Thank you again for your time today. If you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to hit subscribe, rate, and review. I would so appreciate it. The high rate and reviews will help others find the podcast so we can amplify, normalize, and break the mental health stigma. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. This is given with the understanding that neither the host or the guest are providing legal, mental health, or other professional information. If you need a professional, you should find one. This podcast does not substitute for personal professional services.